The facts are it's more than that.
In your manifesto, Brian Stanley, you refer to extra tax increases, continued savings and a stimulus package. But you haven't identified where these savings will be made.
And identified exactly for you. The first thing we would do is that we bring in 1 billion from a wealth tax, which will be on assets excluding farmland. We would standardise tax relief. We would collect 410 million through a 48% tax rate.
And the savings?
Only on income over 100,000. In the savings, some of the headline figures are 350 million to cap public servants and semi-state pay at 100,000.
Yielding how much?
We bring in 24 million on savings from rental of prefabs, 200 million from reducing the cost of medicines in the health services by establishing a wholesale company, 200 million to reduce the professional fees that this government has been paying to solicitors, accountants and consultants. That's some of ours. We've put forward...
But how will you make up the bulk of this nearly 20 billion euro adjustment?
Well, what we would do, starting this year, we've set out 4.6 billion in savings and extra revenue that wouldn't hit people on low and middle incomes. Starting this year with that money, okay? We will continue over the 6-year period to make those savings, to raise the extra revenue, but most importantly to grow the economy, to reduce the amount of money that's been going out on unemployment benefits by getting people back into work through our job stimulus package, and increasing the revenue coming into the state. That is the key thing we have to do. Neither the Fine Gael nor the Labour candidate dealt with the structural questions in the economy. I have set out our stall on them, right? What I'm saying to you is that along with that, we have to have a job stimulus package in place as well to bring in that effort.
Funded by, revenue. Where will this 7 billion euro come from?
The government, you will know it. The government, the Fianna Fáil government, the outgoing one, they want to plug another hole in the bank with 12.5 billion from the National Pension Reserve Fund.
Yes, but you're talking about a stimulus package of 7 billion euro.
Sinn Féin, and
to be derived from where?
And Sinn Féin would not take 12.5 billion out of it this year, as Fianna Fáil are doing.
Sinn Féin would take 2 billion for this stimulus package on which you've based much of your manifesto. Will come from where?
Sinn Féin would take 2 billion out of the National Pension Reserve Fund this year to fund this year's part of it. Okay, we would do that over a 3.5-year period. According to economists such as Philip Lane,
I don't know where Sinn Féin are getting all this money.
It brings a net return to the exchequer of 16.5 billion over a 6-year period.
The argument was made by Micheál Martin last night. There isn't 7 billion euro left in the National Pension Reserve
Fund. That's because Fianna Fáil wants to take 12.5 billion.
You can't spend it twice, Brian.
They want to take 12.5 billion out of it to bail out the banks. What Sinn Féin is saying is that you shouldn't take the 12.5 billion out of it to do that. That's the difference.
Okay, I want to give Peter, or rather Robert Troy, an opportunity to get back in here, because we've heard from the alternatives, the opposition.
Yes, and I think it's fair to point out, Will, you know, we have in our EU-IMF deal, we have secured and are fully funded for the next 4 years, and that is critical. That is important, because people out there need to know that their teachers' pay, nurses' pay, social welfare payments are secure. We are funded for the next 4 years.
But funded
funded to bail out banks.
And this provides
funded for, Robert.
This provides certainty. It provides a window of opportunity for us as a country to get our house in order. And they're funded at a cost. The interest rate, while I do agree, is quite stringent. You know, we have. Ollie Rehn on record coming out yesterday and saying, you know, we cannot unilaterally agree to renegotiate this deal, but it is fairly widely accepted that as more countries get involved in this EU-IMF deal, as they predict possibly Spain, Portugal, Italy might have to look for assistance from this, that the terms of agreement and reference will be renegotiated.
But that's all very vague and it's circumstantial. What if they are not adjusted? Do you believe that Ireland can support an interest rate, an average interest rate of 5.8% on borrowings of upwards of 100 billion euro?
Well, I just want to point out that, you know, the interest payments at the moment represent 20% of the tax revenue in 2014.
Wow.
And this is not, if you go back to 1985, they reached close to 35% of the tax. And the point
the
reason why I want to make this point is because in 1985 we were in difficult situations and we got ourselves out of it, and we can get ourselves out of it.
Well, we will, but not with this government.
The opposition
have produced a national.
Could I make a point just in relation to that?
Well, actually, you've produced a national recovery plan, the 4-year plan, which is predicated on interest rates which are lower than the interest rate we are paying, on growth rates which are higher than what we're likely to achieve.
Absolutely.
So is your recovery plan redundant at this stage, Robert Troy?
No, I don't think
The Fianna Fáil plan is cuckoo.
Can you let Robert Troy respond just for 1 second?
I had to go glasses and say it's amazing to hear Sinn Féin saying the Fianna Fáil plan is cuckoo. But I want to know. Sorry,
you've based it on assumptions which are now false. So is your plan redundant?
I want to know why or where Sinn Féin are going to fund this country going forward.
Okay, maybe you deal with your own policy first.
Well,
the plan is based on assumptions which are now false. The interest rate we're paying is higher than that on which the plan is based. The growth rate is lower. So what's Plan B?
Plan B is, as I said already, is a new government.
Exactly, a new government. That's what's needed.
Let him answer.
The point I have made, Will, is that we are funded for the next 4 years. That Ollie Wren has come out and said, as late as yesterday.
Okay,
that's our commissioner.
The funding is a secondary issue.
Well, no, I don't think it is. I don't think it is.
To correct the deficit to 3% of GDP by 2014 is based on assumptions which are now no longer accurate. So what is Plan B?
Well, our last two figures that came in, the quarterly results, the third quarter and the fourth quarter in 2010, our tax receipts were on target, as was predicted by the Department of Finance. They were on target. We don't know what the tax return is like for the first quarter in 2011.
Do you accept that the growth rate, according to the Department of Finance, will be lower than in your 4-year plan?
But over the period of the plan, it might be lower in the short term, but over the period of the plan, it is widely acknowledged that we'll have a growth rate of somewhere in the region of 2.25%.
But we'll look at right now under the Fianna Fáil strategy and the Fianna Fáil plan. More people are continuing to sign on, more children and graduates are continuing to emigrate, and more small businesses and shops are continuing to close. That's the reality across Laois, Offaly. That's the reality across the Midlands. And what we're saying is this: there is only one way out of that. You must renegotiate the plan. Eamon Gilmore has said his mind to that. Remember this.
But is there one way? Because the Labour Party has adopted several ways over the last few months. On the 20th of October,
we cannot renegotiate it on our own. We cannot renegotiate it on our own.
Sorry, you must start.
There was an all-party meeting on the 20th of October, and Labour emerged from that quite content to deal with this exchequer deficit by 2014. Now that's been accepted.
Let me answer that. That's a fair point. First of all, let me point out that Brian Lennon, when he accepted the bank bailout and when he bought Anglo on behalf of the taxpayer, when we were sold a pup and the government bought it, he said this is the cheapest bailout in the world. He put a price of 4 billion on it. It's now 35 billion, and Alan Dukes is looking for another 15 billion. That's the root of the entire problem.
But how does that affect the exchequer deficit? Is it the interest repayment?
No. The situation is this, that we must extend the period of time in which we can rectify our own balance of payments, because the 2014 deadline is not achievable. It will bring the country to its knees. It's like if you had a personal loan or a personal debt, you couldn't meet on it and make ends meet. You would go to the bank and look to extend the period of time. That's why Labour have moved from a 2014 resolution to a 2016 resolution. We need more time to get our finances in order. Otherwise,
what if you're not given that flexibility? And I actually want to put this to Fine Gael as well.
But I can answer that, Will. So just answer that. Paul Krugman, the Nobel laureate economist, has said that we must renegotiate the deal. This is someone from outside the country. He's saying what has happened is they privatised the gain and now they've nationalised the pain. What we have to do is renegotiate it. There is a lot of sympathy in the IMF and the EU for that proposal.
The EU allows that. Ollie Wren was quite explicit yesterday in saying that in the short term, that renegotiation, that room to manoeuvre is not there.
He has to say that. What we're saying is this.
What do you mean he has to say that?
Because
is that the position or isn't it?
No, he's adopting his negotiating position. We're saying what we need is a new government to stand up for Ireland, to put the taxpayer ahead of the big banks. The German and French banks must pay some part of the responsibility and take a share of the hit for loaning recklessly to Anglo.
I want to deal with the Sinn Féin position in a moment, which is to tear up the agreement altogether. But on just one last point concerning the IMF arrangement, Peter Burke, it is quite specific in this memorandum of understanding between the state and the EU that in budget 2011 there will be revenue measures of 1.5 billion euro, there will be expenditure reductions of 2.1 billion euro. It seems to be sacrosanct, set in stone. So why does your party believe that you can move the goalposts?
Well, first of all, Will, I think the Irish state can't sustain a 5.8% interest rate. You have two elements to this problem.
But that's immaterial.
It's not immaterial. It's critical. It's critical to this deal.
What communication has your party had with the EU that suggests that these terms are negotiable?
This is not immaterial. First of all, I would say I'd be reminding Ollie Rehn back in 1992 when he was in the Finnish cabinet, and when they were involved looking with the EU for a bailout package. They got their deal renegotiated at that time because they wouldn't go around with the European consensus. The Fine Gael party is a member of the European People's Party. That's the largest movement in Europe.
Okay.
And
what
Angela Merkel and heads of state in Europe are a member of that. The majority of the European heads of state.
What gesture will Fine Gael have to give Europe in order to secure this? Will corporation tax be on the table?
No, corporation tax will not be on the table, and we've made that clear it will not be on the table. We want a deal that is viable, and the deal that we have on the table at the moment, the idea that our state is funded for the next five years is incorrect. It's funded until next June, 12 months. But the critical thing is that that's on the basis that we meet these targets. The $6 billion that has to be contracted out of the economy in 2011, we have to meet that. And it's our belief in Fine Gael that the current government's policy will not meet that target.
Okay, Brian Stanley, Sinn Féin wants to rip this document up altogether and source funding from where?
The first thing I just want to come back on, because it was stated by the Fianna Fáil candidate in relation to our proposal. The facts is that Fianna Fáil's plan is based on jelly. It's not even based on sand. Their plan, which I have a summary of here from Fianna Fáil, says that it's based on 2.75% growth. The facts is the central bank is saying that growth this year will be 1%. That's the facts of it. The deal is a lousy bailout.
But what alternative do you have?
Can I just say that the alternative, if we continue with this at 5.8% interest rate, we cannot afford it. The servicing of the interest on this alone by the end of 2013 is 8.7 billion.
But it's still lower than on the bond markets. You're proposing, in your manifesto, you're talking about a budget deficit next year of 15 billion euro. So you will go to the bond markets.
Goodbody stockbrokers have expressed concern last week about the fact that the Irish taxpayer cannot carry servicing of the sovereign debt and this debt being loaded on top of it as well.
Okay,
what Sinn Féin is saying,
let's deal
what
with
Sinn Féin
next
is
year.
very clear.
You're proposing next year to re-enter the bond markets in 2012 at a time when the country, according to your figures...
And I want you to give me an opportunity to explain this.
Okay, at a time when, according to your figures, next year the country will have a deficit of over 15 billion euro. So what rate do you think you can get on the bond markets next year?
I want to answer the question. The first thing I would say to you is that it will be reduced to 15 billion by next year under our plan. That's the first thing to say to you.
And what the reason that...
if you want to answer the question for me, I don't know if I can ask me.
Well, no, I'm asking the question and you haven't answered it.
Yeah, but just if I can be allowed, I just want the same opportunity as the other three candidates. Please, just answer the question, right? The first thing I would say to you is this, is that the debt, the gap in the finances, public finances, will be down to 15 billion. That's the first thing, so that's reduced. The second thing, and the critical most important thing, because a bondholder will not invest in a dodgy investment. This state is a dodgy investment at present. So with it reduced to 15 billion, that's the first positive sign.
Right,
the second thing is...
The second thing is
the second thing is
we don't have all morning, so what rate do you think you can get next year?
The second thing is that we would separate the private debt from the sovereign debt, right? We would separate the debts of the bankers and bondholders from the sovereign debt, which the taxpayer, we accept, is responsible for. We would put a bank resolution package in place to deal with the banks, and we would have a growing economy because we would have a stimulus package in place.
Brian Stanley, you will decouple sovereign debt from private debt. That point is made. You will then re-enter the bond markets with a deficit of 15 billion euro for 2012. What rate do you realistically think?
Well, can I give you one example? If you take the case of Iceland, they defaulted on some of theirs.
3 minutes, you still haven't answered the question.
And they are borrowing at 2.8%. They are borrowing at 2.8 and 3%.
And the standard of living in Iceland has fallen by 38%.
We believe that in the case of the Irish state, if you take the 3 steps that we're outlining in relation to solving the banks, separating the private debts from sovereign debt, and putting a stimulus package in place, that this will be seen as a safe bet for investments.
You don't know what rate you will get.
The point is, Will,
the facts of the matter is this. Is that Fianna Fáil drove it to 9% because of what they've done, the reckless lending, because of the fact they were mixing
but there's now
private
a
debts with
source of
sovereign
funding
debts
in place at 5.8%. You propose to rip that up, and I'm trying to ask you, how much do you think you will get this rate for?
We believe we will get it for a very, very small percentage of that that a lot better deal can be done. If you look at what has happened with other states, if you look at what's happened with other states, what happens with bondholders, when they see a state as being a safe bet, they will lend money. They will lend money at a cheap rate.
Okay. Can I just move on to jobs?
They won't do it with this country because under Fianna Fáil, it's not seen as a safe bet.
One simple question. Brian, if I lent you €100 today and told you going out of this studio, no, I can't pay that back. But hold on a second, I'll come back to you next week and see, will you lend me €200? You're talking about burning the bondholders and then going back to borrow off them again. No one will lend to us if we don't repay or what we owe them at the moment.
The experience internationally is bondholders are gamblers. If they see a good bet, if they see a good return and from a sound investment, they will do it. This state, Robert, under your government, is not a safe bet.
So look,
it's built on jelly, and it needs to change.
Okay, if we don't move on to the issue of jobs, we will never get it today. So unfortunately, I have to take a break at this point. We will come back to jobs.